Hi, in this video we will see how we can check whether a function is increasing, decreasing, or constant. To that end, let's consider f, which is defined from a to b with the equation y is equal to f of x. Then the function f is increasing if f of a is bigger than f of b for a bigger than b. In other words, if we select two numbers from the domain of f, such as a and b, where a is bigger than b, if f of a was bigger than f of b, that means the direction of inequality was preserved, then the function is increasing. The function is decreasing if f of a is bigger than f of b for a less than b. Here we can see that the direction of inequality is changed. We choose two numbers a and b such that a is less than b, but we find that f of a is bigger than f of b. Such a function is decreasing. A function is constant if the value of the function for two different values of x remains the same. In other words, f of a is equal to f of b for a different from b. A can be less than b or bigger than b, but the value of the function remains the same. We can also visualize increasing, decreasing, and constant functions by its graph. For example, consider this function here. If you run a parallel line to y-axis from minus infinity to plus infinity or from left to right, the direction of the graph of the function is upwards. As you can see, as we are moving to the right, the direction of the graph is upwards. The graph of this function, and if we run the line from left to right, we can see that the direction of the graph is downwards. And if you consider the graph of this function and you run the line from the left to right, you see that the direction of the graph remains the same. As a result, this function whose direction is upwards is increasing. This function whose direction is downwards is decreasing. This function whose direction doesn't change is constant. Consider the function f of x is equal to 3x plus 1. In order to show whether this function is increasing, decreasing, or constant, we select two values from its domain. Later on, we will see that the domain of this function is the set of real numbers, and we select just two real numbers. For this purpose, for instance, we consider 3 and 4, and we know that 3 is less than 4. Next, what we do is we find the value of the function at 3 and we find the value of the function at 4. In other words, we find f of 3. f of 3 is equal to 3 times 3 plus 1. We substitute x with 3. 3 plus 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10. And we find f of 4. f of 4 is 3 times 4 plus 4, which is 16. Now we compare f of 3 against f of 4. And we see that f of 3, which is 10, is less than f of 4, which is 16. Now, if you compare this inequality sign with this inequality sign, you see that both inequality sign having the same directions. Therefore, by definition, this function is increasing.